common misconception is that, if you buy into a franchise, it's like buying a car. You turn the key and you drive. It works just like that. But it's not. It's much more like buying a bicycle. You get the framework, you get the tools, you get the everything, but you've got to do the pedaling. And if you pedal fast, you'll go fast, right? If you pedal slow, you'll go slow. Sometimes what you need is somebody to say to you that you can't do something in order for you to fulfill your potential. What most people don't realize is the minute they become a franchisor, right, they stop becoming a tutor. Often what happens is when people first franchise their businesses, they underestimate the emotional challenge that brings. In my whole school career, we only ever had one first language English-speaking teacher. So all of our other teachers were Afrikaans, and they weren't massively keen on anyone from English descent. The future is basically going to be we're going to continue growing our client base, our commercial client base, but we will be selecting those clients based on whether or not we can use their business to make a social impact somewhere in the world.
Hello and welcome to the Qualified Tutor podcast, the podcast that brings you the latest in the world of tutoring, edtech and education, and hopefully inspires in you the big change that each and every one of us is capable of. Qualified Tutor is an industry-leading tutor training organisation and online tutoring community for thousands of tutors around the world. This podcast is the voice of this community, where we aim to hear from tutors, teachers, entrepreneurs, coaches, business experts, students, tutorpreneurs, and more from the world of tutoring about what inspires them every day, how they can help tutors like you, and what they've learnt about tutoring along the way. The question is, what will you learn today?
Hello and welcome, dear listeners, to the 117th episode of the Qualified Tutor podcast. My name is Ludo Miller, the host of this podcast. Welcome back to our regular listeners. Welcome to any of you for whom this is your first time listening to the Qualified Tutor podcast. And of course, a huge welcome to the man who's going to make this episode happen, Sean Goldsmith. Welcome, Sean.
Thank you for all the pressure you've just placed on me.
No. This is going to be a wonderful conversation about franchising. Sean, you are a true expert in this field. So listeners, sit back, relax. Sean's going to take you through how franchising works. But just as a little intro so that you know where Sean's coming from. Sean is the co-founder of Groe Global, who, if you haven't heard of Groe Global before, are an international franchising consultancy, a 360-degree development service for your business. And truly, they do everything that you as a business need to innovate, to build your brand. Now, franchising is a huge part of education, and Groe Global work in this sector, as well as fashion, retail, finance, and social media. Perhaps we can learn a little bit from stories and anecdotes from those industries today. Now, Sean, you have a great deal of knowledge to add to our audience of small tutoring business owners and those looking to grow their brand through partnerships and collaboration. And as we were just talking about before, we're lucky to announce that Sean will also be joining a rocket-powered roundtable session on Tuesday, the 28th of June at the Love Tutoring Festival 3. And you can hear him for free by heading to the link in the show notes to grab your ticket. So that's an important thing to state out first. But without further ado, Sean, welcome to the podcast. What's giving you reason to smile today, Sean?
Oh, so many different things. The sun's shining finally in Winchester. So that's step number one. But no, actually, this is perfect timing, because this morning we got our official documentation. We've just set up a charity in South Africa, which is a Pan-African charity called the Foundation of Franchising in Africa, and its sole purpose is to use the mechanism and the strategies behind franchising to be able to help the poorest of the poor. So where many in the past, many NGOs and World Banks and guys like that have gone into Africa and started some amazing initiatives where they effectively gave money to local communities to start these initiatives. The unfortunate thing is, quite often what happens is the minute the charity or the UN or whoever it is that set it up kind of step back because they're moving on to the next project, these projects really frequently fail. Now, what franchising does in the best possible way is it creates a cyclical sort of vested interest in the success of a project, right? So at the moment, we are already working on, a franchise model for sanitary products for ladies in Africa. There are some herbal teas, incredible herbal teas. I don't know if any of you guys have heard of rooibos or red bush. There's some better ones in Africa. So we're working on that. Vertical farming, all of them are all to do with helping out humans, in as far as we can. So that honestly is the thing making me smile today, to be fair.
I think that is going to continue to make you smile for the rest of the year. Those sound like incredibly worthwhile, meaningful projects, Sean. Now, just to take you back a few years, that's obviously a little background to what Sean does today and what he has been building to in his career. But as you know, we like to start this podcast from the beginning. Now, Sean, I gather actual school reports may still be stored away in boxes in South Africa, but you have a strong feeling of what those reports were trying to get to way back in your school days. Do you mind telling us a little bit about that?
Yeah, they were pretty universal. The feedback was frequent and the same from our earliest years. So it's worth saying that I grew up in my parents are from Britain, and my granddad was an engineer, and we ended up in a very, very small community alongside the factory that my granddad started built. But the consequence was we were in the middle of nowhere and in a very, very, very small town. And that town was also very anti-British because of old Boer War sentiments. And in fact, I played rugby with a great-great-grandson of a guy called General De La Rey, who was the main general against the British in the Boer War. So gives you a bit of a feeling. But in my whole school career, we only ever had one first language English-speaking teacher. So all of our other teachers were Afrikaans, and they weren't massively keen on anyone from English descent. So as an example, almost every year, we would, as we entered into our new classroom, we would just automatically go and sit at the back because that was our place. And the classes in South Africa worked with it was ranks. So if you were the smart kids, you were in the A class, and then it went to the B class, the C class, and that was usually the thing. The English kids were always put in the D class, just by definition. So my feedback on the reports were always, talks too much, right? Gets distracted easily, and has massive potential, but never quite focuses. That has never changed to this day.
Do you think then that has led you to why you do what you do today?
Very much so. I speak to many franchisors. In fact, I've got one of the largest mastermind groups for franchising in Britain. We've got about 400 franchisors in there now. But, the one thing that I often say to people is there's all kinds of gurus with PhD and things behind their name, and they've all got the reasons, the why, why people do it. And it's become quite a weird thing now because everyone feels like they need to create or imagine this big why, when actually sometimes the why is a very, very simple thing. So a lot of people start businesses because they've got no choice. That's their why. They need to make money for their family. But my why was because consistently throughout school, we were told as Englishmen we were going to get nowhere. We were never ever going to achieve things. And I still remember my headmaster, Mr. Kruger, saying to me, "Englishman, you are going to be nothing." Right? Those words, those exact words, and they just stuck in my brain. And you know what? My why is actually a little bit of a screw you. And it's more of a chip on the shoulder than anything else. And I say to people frequently, and I don't think people understand how often what's perceived as a negative is actually a very, very strong positive. So a chip on the shoulder is not something to drag you down. A chip on the shoulder is a thing to drive you forward. I'm a big fan of working with people who have a chip on their shoulder because they really are motivated, to go for things. So my motivation and my why is just basically being a chip on the shoulder,
I hope that Mr. Kruger, is living a very fulfilling life, but I hope he's not listening to this podcast. No. I'm sure he won't like to be reminded.
It was a very different world back then. We had amazing teachers, but it was just a culture that we grew up in. And to be fair, I actually sent him an email a few years ago, and it's weird because like some people might be be really sort of put down or angry at somebody doing something like that, right? And the way I've kind of lived my life, and as I got older, I just realized actually that guy did more for me than anybody else I would ever know, because sometimes what you need is somebody to say to you that you can't do something in order for you to fulfill your potential. And I do that in franchising often. And I say to franchisors, you get people that need a cuddle, and you need people that get a kick. You need people who need to be motivated, and then you get people who need to be challenged. And I was one of the challenged ones, right? I needed Mr. Kruger to say to me I was never going to get anywhere, in order for me to say, well, hold my beer, watch this, buddy,
That's brilliant. That really is, Sean. Thank you. So for our listeners out there who heard the word franchising, but perhaps don't know how it applies to what they do or what you do, what does franchising really mean to you, Sean?
So franchising is very, very important to me. I started my life in Britain. I arrived here with £100, literally, and a British passport. And, I started a business very early on. And I was very lucky because I was probably that distracted kid that just took chances where other people didn't see a chance. I went for it. And very early on, at the age of 21, I managed to win the Amazon account in Britain, right? And within about a year and a half, I had 800 people working for me across Britain in Milton Keynes, in Glasgow, Reading, Middlesbrough, everywhere, Stoke-on-Trent. And all of that was just purely because I was just young and I didn't know how to say no, and I didn't know what my own limitations were, et cetera, et cetera. Anyway, it went really, really, really well. But then one day, I had not yet learned the power of good contracts. And, so most of what we did with Amazon was a little bit of gentleman's agreement type thing. It was going very, very well. But at that stage, it was before Eastern Europe had opened up. So there were no Polish workers, etc. It was only South Africans, Aussies, and Kiwis, right? We were all over here on working holiday visas, and there was a real need for workers in places like warehouses and things like that. We did all the pub jobs, the stadium jobs. We poured the pints everywhere. But so what happened is a lot of the people that I'd gathered were all South Africans, Aussies, and Kiwis. So what I said to Amazon was, listen, please, if you could just give us some notice, because these guys are moving here because you are Amazon. Like everyone wants to work for you, So a lot of people relocating specifically to Milton Keynes and to Glasgow, etc., to get jobs. And then on the 24th of December, the one year, they just said to us, listen, sorry, the US thinks there's going to be a slowdown. And all of these guys. I remember firing about 400 people, right, the day before Christmas, at the tender age of 23 at that point. And that really messed my head up. So long story coming to a point, after that, I kind of got out of the recruitment side of things, and I bumped into franchising. My wife was working in a franchise. I spoke to the founder. He liked me, and he said, "Hey, listen, I'll teach you everything you know." Anyway, fast forwarding to today, if I were to say to you why franchising is very, very important, is because I made huge mistakes when I was starting my first business, right? I had no mentoring. I had no people. I could have made 4, 5, 6, 7 times the amount of money if I just had a support group around me, if I'd known that there was a support around me, and access to knowledge, right? I then suddenly realized when I got into franchising that I was speaking to a great many people who were very successful in their corporate careers, but the minute they started a small business, they were just failing, because corporate and small business, very, very, very different beasts. So franchising became a thing that I realized was incredibly successful, the single most successful business format in Britain and the world, really. So just to back that up with statistics, so 93.7% of all franchisees, right, are not only still in business after 3 years, but they're profitable, right? Now, if you take that in comparison with any other small business, that is in stark contrast to the success levels of a DIY business, a do-it-yourself business. That said, franchising has got a dodgy name, right? There have been franchisors, in the past who have been dodgy, and they've done things the wrong way. But again, it's the single rotten apple that kind of messes everybody around. But in general, what I know about franchising is that if you, as a franchisee, start, right, I know that there's a really good likelihood that you are going to feed your family for a long time, and you're going to feed them well. The other thing I know is statistically, every franchise on average hires 13 people, right? So every franchisee we place out in the field through whichever franchise it is, right? I know that I'm feeding a single family plus 13, and that's not even the supply chain. So you actually are, if one franchisee at a time, you're actually making quite a big positive impact on the communities. So that for me is very important.
Yeah, and just to make it very clear for those who don't know, franchising means a single brand and you say you're sending franchisees out into the field. That is people who are taking the franchisor's brand and
Yes.
and making their own local market.
Yeah, what they're doing is they're fast forwarding their own knowledge. So I may have started a tutoring company, right, and been very successful in my own right. And along come some other people, and they say, "Wow, you know what? Actually, you've done a great job, right? Let's just call it Groe Tutoring. I love what you're doing." And often these are people who have been clients, quite frequently. I love what you're doing. I've always wanted to open my own business. I just don't have the confidence. So I then say, well, listen, you know what? How about I help you open up that business? I will mentor you. I will tutor you. I will help you through the whole process. You don't have to go through all the aches and pains of trying to come up with a clever name and how to do marketing and all of that. I've done it all. I've figured it all out, right? So all you need to do is you just need to follow my system. Do exactly what I did, right? And what that's going to do is, my 10 years that I've spent building up this great tutoring company, you're going to be able to get to where I'm at in 2 years or in 1 year. It's just an acceleration of learning, right? The thing is, for the franchisees, it's a very, it's a no-brainer, really. Where the big challenge comes in is people who are wanting to franchise their business, right? Because franchising itself, if you have decided to franchise and help other people kind of open under your brand, what most people don't realize is the minute they become a franchisor, right, they stop becoming a tutor. Because you take on the responsibility of feeding other people's families, not as an employee, but you take on the responsibility from somebody who has paid you money for your knowledge. So you've got that responsibility, and there is that requirement from the franchisee for you to fulfill your obligations in supporting and helping, etc. And often what happens is when people first franchise their businesses, they underestimate the emotional challenge that brings. Because if your franchisee, as an example, is having a bit of a tough time, maybe two competitors open at the same time or whatever, unpredictable sort of things happen. The franchisee will be very frustrated, and quite often, and in fact this is almost a guarantee, at some point a franchisee will turn around and say, this model is broken, this was never going to work, this was a bit of a scam, and you just did it for the money and all of that kind of stuff. I can categorically tell you, I know almost all the franchisors in Britain. I actually know these people. They are genuinely good people, right? And they genuinely want to help. I've probably only met a couple that I think, wow, you're dodgy. But what happens is the emotional turmoil on the franchisor is a real thing. They take it very personally. There's no separating their business, or that comment that people always say, well, it's just business, don't take it personally. You can't do it when it's your own brand, when it's your baby, and somebody else is building it up. It is a very, very personal thing. So that's one of the big challenges that franchisors have.
Okay, let's go.
Welcome, everyone, to this, the 11 a.m. event on Monday, the 24th of January at the Love Tutoring Festival.
Okay, here we go. So, the first prize that we are going to give away today is number 9. Number 9 is, I need an extra monitor. That's what I need.
So, welcome to the 2 p.m. keynote at the Love Tutoring Festival, day 2, Tuesday the 25th of January. It's 2 p.m. UK time, where many of us here are based. Our speaker today is Michael Bungay-Stanier, who is as you can see here, Wall Street Journal best-selling author on coaching.
Maybe I hand it back to Ludo as a kind of what needs to be said to wrap us up here.
Well, Michael, you've made my job very simple. There doesn't really need to be much more said. That was world class.
Yes, for those of you wondering, those were just a few highlights from the incredible Love Tutoring Festival 2 that took place at the end of January of this year, 2022. The big news from Qualified Tutor and the Love Tutoring Festival team is that we're back from Monday the 27th of June to Friday the 1st of July. The Love Tutoring Festival 3 will return. The focus of this festival is on alignment and new beginnings. The festival will have a slightly different feel to it, but all of the main tenets will still be there. A host of amazing speakers, including world-renowned leaders in education such as Craig Barton, will be joining us for a festival fanfare of training and of connection. Those are the values which hold the Love Tutoring Festival together, and those are the values that we want you to come and take part in over the week of the festival. Head to qualifiedtutor.org/love-tutoring-festival, or simply head to our website qualifiedtutor.org to find out more and book your ticket today.
So, from a franchisee's point of view, how do you scope out? How do you find how do you take advantage of good franchisor opportunities?
So let me start off this way. If you have spoken to somebody who has a decent business, right, a franchisor who has a decent business, they've built up a decent operation, you already know a little bit about what your potential is, right? Because you need to duplicate things. The one thing that you must always understand and must realize is that, yes, there are better tutoring companies and there are some that are still kind of finding their feet, but still 90% of the workload, right, is up to you. So the common misconception is that, if you buy into a franchise, it's like buying a car. You turn the key and you drive. It works just like that. But it's not. It's much more like buying a bicycle. You get the framework, you get the tools, you get the everything, but you've got to do the pedaling. And if you pedal fast, you'll go fast, right? If you pedal slow, you'll go slow. So when you buy into a franchise, you must obviously look at the business, you understand the model, look at the materials. Most importantly, understand who is going to be your support person, right? The salespeople are irrelevant to you. Remember, the salespeople are just there for the first part of the journey. This is a long-term relationship, probably 5 years at least, right? So if there was one thing that you need to do is you need to actually build up or get to know the support people before actually signing up, right? But still, you get the methodology, you've got the bicycle, right? But nobody's going to pedal for you. And that's the one thing that I think that people really do need to realize before they buy a franchise.
Yeah. So in your experience then, how do you overcome then the potential problems in the relationship between franchisor and franchisee? What are some of the ways that a good franchisor will manage their franchisees?
Yeah, so as I said, I think it all starts right at the beginning. So I frequently say to people that franchising is an ecosystem; it's not a system, right? And going back to my days when I was a game ranger in South Africa, right? Everything affects everything. So the very first moment that you speak to the franchisor, that relationship that you set up over there, the expectation that is set from the franchisor to you in terms of what how difficult it's going to be and what the challenges are, and etc. Sometimes franchisors don't want to tell people that it's actually quite tough. They don't want to say that because they think, well, actually, that's not what people want to hear. But in fact, that is what people want to hear. They want to know that it's going to be hard work so that they can mentally prepare themselves for that. If that piece is done, automatically everything else starts working much better. However, what I would say, just in terms of process from a franchisor's point of view, regular contact, and bearing in mind this is a partnership, right? So it's not a given that the franchisor must contact you once a week. Right, you contact each other, friendly stuff. So make sure that there is some form of regular contact with your franchisor. Remember, the relationship you have with your franchisor is going to also, just from a normal human point of view, going to dictate how much attention you get. So work with them when challenges come up, which they will 100% all the time come up, and that are it's very unpredictable for the franchisor. Understand as a franchisee, when you ask a franchisor for help or advice or anything like that, the franchisor feels in their head that they must be all-knowing. So they put on this all-knowing face, like, yes, I know exactly what to do here. And then they panic and go try and figure it out. But I think if you've got a good relationship with your franchisor, a very open relationship, you will thrive. And as long as you also put in the effort. So follow the system. I can't tell you this. It's a bit of a phrasing that you always hear in franchising, and there's a reason for it, because almost always what happens is people who come up with their own cool ideas, right? They then really suffer for a little while. Sometimes it works out, but often what happens is the business suddenly does a bit of a nosedive until they come back and follow the system. They've forgotten that the guy who started the franchise probably thought about that and tried it 15 different ways and lost 20 grand in the process. So if you just follow their system, likelihood is that you're going to do really well. Yeah.
So, Sean, knowing all that you do about franchising, I was going to ask, would you encourage anyone to become a franchisor? But actually, I prefer to ask, would you encourage your own kids, for example, to become a franchisor?
They are, well, look, I've already had this conversation with them when they were 3, right? So, and by the way, we actually started my kids, So I'm going to answer the question again in a roundabout way. So when I first had my eldest, I was looking, it was during that time when there were lots of conversations and arguments between people about university or apprenticeships, right? And like there was one camp that was like, oh my God, you've got to go to university. And one camp that says, oh, university is rubbish. You just go to an apprenticeship and, get industry knowledge. And there was a gaping hole in the middle, right? Called start your own thing, my son. And I remember when I left school and at 18 and I had no idea what to do. I went to my granddad, ex-Royal Navy man from North Essex, right? And I said to him, Granddad, I don't know. There's no jobs and no this and no that, life's awful. And he just poked me. He was only short. He was like 5'7" or something. And he just poked me straight in the chest like this. I still feel it. I've got PTSD from it. Bang, he poked me like this in the chest. And he said, boy, if you don't have a job, make a job. As simple as that. But anyway, so my kids actually, they started at the age of 5 going to village fetes. They started with balloon shops, specific balloon shops, like with the loud balloons, because I was trying to teach them promotion. Bang the balloons a lot and the kids will come, advertising lesson. My middle child, Jack, has got Jack's Jams. So he makes Jack's Jams. He's learned that he can go to Aldi and spend £4 on some frozen fruit and some sugar. And he can then make £30 out of that by selling it at the local shop. So yes, my children have been told that they will not be receiving a car or anything of the sort when they're 18. They will get a franchise, however, or they'll get some money to start a business. And I don't know if I want them or, if it's right for them to become franchisors, because it's not right for everybody. You've got to be a pretty tough, resilient person to be a franchisor, because it is a tough thing to do. But once you crack it, once you nail it, it is genuinely one of the most fulfilling things when you see people come to you afterwards and just say, my God, look at this. I've just managed to buy my house. Or look at this, my kids are going there. It's amazing.
Very rewarding. So Sean, it feels like you're equating, franchising with entrepreneurialism. Do you see the two as? I mean, yeah, it's not maybe obvious that the two go together, but.
Well, I've got a theory, or at least a definition, right? I believe that an entrepreneur is a crazy thing. It's What I mean by that is I don't think that what we generally refer to as entrepreneurs are entrepreneurs. Most people, I'd say probably 98% of people who start businesses are enterprising. They're enterprising individuals, right, who spot a gap, see something, make a calculated decision, right, and go for it. Entrepreneurs are they have no ability not to go for something, right? They are, and I'm speaking about myself here, right? I am constantly looking at different things, different angles. If I didn't have a team behind me, nothing would get done ever, right? So I think that you get entrepreneurs that are the crazies. They're the jet setters. They're the guys who go and try the maddest things, right? But those are the guys that were doing the Livingstons of the world, preparing the ground for everybody else, or at least showing everybody else what doesn't work. But as enterprising individuals, I think that if you feel like your business is good, you've got a good tutoring business, and you feel like you want to expand it, but a branch network is not the way to go, because hiring people and getting them motivated, managing loads of people is a tough thing, right, in any environment. But you've got something special about you, right? Then franchising is a very, very, very good vehicle for rapidly rolling out your idea, your methodology, and your systems, right? The beautiful thing about franchising is that, again, franchisees are generally enterprising people, not entrepreneurs. If they were entrepreneurs, they'd be you, right? So what happens is you then get these incredible enterprising people who have the greatest vested interest in the success of their own business, which is your business, right? So you don't have what you might have with a manager that's like, okay, 5 o'clock gone, right? You've got somebody where it's their business and they are pushing it in their local area. They are walking around with a T-shirt, on a Sunday, on holiday, that kind of thing. So it can be magnificent if you do it right.
Sean, I think that's such a powerful message to leave listeners with. I am so pleased that we brought you to the podcast because your energy is infectious and your experience is hugely valuable. And it's not every day that you get to speak to someone who's launched an international franchising brand. You've talked there about how difficult it can be to be a franchisor, and there are so many pitfalls to it, and places that if you're not dedicated and willing to learn from others, you will fall, you'll fail. So I think for many of our listeners, that'll be a huge boost to hear that, and may even encourage them to jump into franchising themselves, whether as a franchisor or a franchisee.
And now, a brief word from last week's guest, Stephen Berryman.
It was great to join the Qualified Tutor podcast and really dig into important issues in teaching. Ludo's really easy to talk to, and I think actually his questions are really incisive too, so it really propels the conversation on. If you're a future guest of the podcast, be ready to think, be ready to be challenged, and just be yourself and enjoy the conversation.
Just to kind of wrap up here, because we're just coming to the end really of this episode, I'd love to ask Sean, you're a man full of ideas. What's next for Sean Goldsmith?
Honestly, I think, we've been doing really, we've been doing pretty well in the franchising world. I think that my going back to the beginning, my why is to try and make an impact on the world. I'd quite like to go to heaven one day. I think the separation and actually we had this talk yesterday in the IFA, the International Franchise Association. There was a suppliers chat, and they were like, how do you retain staff? And everyone was talking about, what we do is we incentivize them with cash, or we give them shares, we give them all this kind of stuff. And it came to my turn, and I said, what I do is I tell my people that we're going to have a day job, and then we're going to have a human job. And we separate, we get everybody involved in social impact businesses and causes where we can actually properly help other humans. And I tell you, especially in this modern day and age, that counts for a lot, to be able to leave a legacy and genuinely help people who otherwise would not get help. So I think the future is basically going to be, we're going to continue growing our client base, our commercial client base, but we will be selecting those clients based on whether or not we can use their business to make a social impact somewhere in the world.
No more meaningful mission, I can imagine, Sean. Thank you for laying that out. If you'd like to hear more about Sean, if you'd like to find out more about Groe Global, then Groe Global, that's Groe with an E, so GROE global.com is the place to head. If you want to hear Sean speak a little more about franchising, of course, grabbing your ticket to the Love Tutoring Festival 3, you'll get to hear Sean live. If you can't wait till then, you can hear Sean on the Future Fit Fridays podcast with Zanele and Njapha. You can find the link to that in the show notes below. But Sean, if they want to contact you right after this, what is the best place to go?
So I just firstly want to apologize to all the English teachers out there for the spelling of the name. The reason was because I wanted to be cool like the kids, and nobody else spelled Groe this way. It was a branding exercise. So,
there we go.
But literally just Sean, SEAN at groglobal.com. I'm always available. We're not one of those companies who, charge for chats or, advice or anything like that. So if you ever need any advice, or you just want some insights into a particular franchise, if you're going to be a franchisee, give me a shout. I know most of them. So I'm more than happy to give some advice.
Thank you so much, Sean. That was rocket powered, really. Next time we have, the wonderful AJ Harper, who is an expert on authorship. She's an author coach for our own Julia Silver. She'll be talking to us about business in authorship and authorship in business. So that's what we have to look forward to in next week's episode. But for one final time, Sean, thank you very much for joining us here on the Qualified Tutor podcast.
It's a great pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Cheerio.
Cheers.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Qualified Tutor podcast. Whether you're a regular listener of this podcast or you've just stumbled across it, join the Qualified Tutor podcast group within the Qualified Tutor community to stay up to date with our latest news, offers, workshops, and of course, simply to meet other tutors like you. Whatever your level as a tutor, our training courses will be the next step in your professional development. Visit qualifiedtutor.org/training to find out more about our CPD accredited and Ofqual recognised courses, the first of their kind in the tutoring industry. Your student deserves the best tutor possible. Make that happen today by joining Qualified Tutor.